Welcome to the Talking Morons. I'm moron number one, Isaiah, and this is my wife, moron number two.
Helena.
And today we're going to be talking about the differences in education between Germany and the United States.
Right. So, as a context, I'm from Germany, which is why we actually have some insight into that. And we think some of those differences between the two countries, because, they're still pretty similar. They're still Western countries and everything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's actually really interesting, too, because it's not much talked about, at least not if you're not looking for it, if that makes sense. Like specifically. And yeah, we wanted to start with education because it's kind of a big part of everyone's lives, especially ours right now too. Um, I guess we're gonna start with the differences in education in general. I mean, so it starts at daycare really too.
Yeah,
It's already very different at daycare, and then
let's go into that.
let's
So,
go to that. Okay, sure.
so
Daycare.
daycare here in
How's
the United
daycare here?
daycare here in the U.S. is very expensive to the point where a lot of people just can't afford it unless they get like
That's
scholarships
true.
or grants for it.
You can get a scholarship for daycare.
Depends on the daycare, but I think so.
But is it you see people on Facebook saying all the time, well, they have a kid now and then they're trying to take care of another kid because it literally wouldn't make sense for them to go to work because they would not really earn much more probably um, as when they, like putting your kid into daycare and then working a job that's probably not a very high paying job will be less, like, give you less money in the end than just keeping your kid home and taking care of another kid, which is crazy.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, yeah, no, I mean, some most people still have to do it, I guess, because one partner maybe doesn't earn enough alone, right? So you still have to find some way, but it's crazy expensive, especially the infant rooms, because I used to work in a daycare here, and it was a pretty expensive region, anyways, to be honest. So it was probably more expensive than most daycares, but it was around um, $2,000 a month for one full-time spot in the infant room, which is crazy. That's so much.
Yeah.
Um,
How does that differ from Germany?
so I don't know how accurate this actually is, but I know because it's, what do you call it? Is it substituted by the government? Like they give money to
Subsidized.
subsidized. Okay, it's subsidized by the government, um, which means you pay around, I think this is pretty accurate, around in a year in Germany for daycare, you pay around what you pay here in a month. It includes food and all of that, right? Mostly, I feel like you only pay for the food really, because you don't pay too much for the spot itself, I guess. That's all the subsidized part. And again, it probably differs from region to region in the US and in Germany and all of that, right? But generally, that's probably how you can think about it. Like a year of daycare in Germany is how much you spend here in a month. And I think that's really crazy and not very, like, why? That must put, I've never thought about that putting your kid into daycare so you can go work will put a lot of stress on you
Yeah,
eventually.
must put a lot of strain on a lot of families here.
Yeah, especially because, yeah, no, yeah, I don't know. What contributes to is obviously that people here we don't have to go into it too much maybe, but you don't really get much maternity leave in the United States, obviously. It's like 3 or 4 months, I think. I think most babies are 3 or 4 months when they start daycare here. In Germany, you get a year. So all those infant rooms don't really exist. There are a few, I think, just because apparently some people want to start working earlier after a few months or even 6 months or so of having a baby. But you can stay home and get paid for a year, which means they generally start in the tier pretty much called like taller one or something like that, which also eliminates a lot of because it is paid, right? So you can focus on your baby, you get paid, you don't have to worry financially, and then I think it's really cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Um, I think in large part, just sort of like with the people that I've talked with, there's a lot of people who disagree with, in the United States at least, with subsidizing something like childcare, because people tend to say, well, if I don't have kids, why should my money go towards helping people who do have kids? I mean, it's definitely a very like self-centered type of thinking, right? Hey, Sheila, easy girl.
But couldn't you also say that because I mean your tax money is always going to other people too? Like what is it Medicare for the like people over 60 or something? The I think it's Medic or is it Medicaid? No, I think Medicare.
Medicare, yeah.
Right. Like our taxes, a lot of our taxes go there apparently, right?
I
And
mean,
that's I mean I'm not
sure.
saying it's wrong, but the argument that maybe you won't need that. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you won't necessarily need Medicare. Maybe you'll have enough money to buy your own private health insurance if you want that. Is that like really a good argument? I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, our country's kind of stuck in a place where I don't know, people are very individualistic, not very collectivist mentality here, and they're also very. I mean, the Red Scare definitely left its mark on our capitalist society, where like I think our country and companies and whoever else who could profit from, basically scaring us from social system ideas, right? Like we essentially just got very afraid of anything that has to do with
Right.
socialism or anything tied with communism or anything similar. Um, and I think in a way it's kind of like caused our society to regress, um, because we don't care about each other. We just care about how we can individually profit or benefit from things. Um,
Isn't that even kind of? I don't know how accurate this really is, but what people say that Americans are kind of like, if it's not capitalism, it's basically instantly communism. Like there's no in between.
yeah, I mean, people here are pretty dumb about that.
I mean, obviously not everyone, right? Like we know that, but
You get into the communism capitalism debate, and you definitely have the right who's very against anything socialist. And you have to ask them like, okay, where do you think the military comes from, right? Like it's not a private military. The military is funded by your tax dollars. You wouldn't have a military if you didn't have some sort of socialism here. Um, and then the other part of that, right? Like road infrastructure, all infrastructure actually, pretty much all infrastructure is funded through your tax dollars. So you just wouldn't have streets or highways or anything tying the country together. And then also public education here, which I know it's kind of ironic that we're talking about how we don't subsidize daycare, but pretty much when you get past daycare, you get into public education, and that's a beautiful thing to be able to like educate the public to a point that we can all work on a relatively high level. Um, it's a great thing to have, and you ask people about those kinds of things, and they either say like, "Ah, I don't think we should have public education," which is absolutely fucking bonkers, or they say that they just don't really know what to say, and they're kind of grasping at straws.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
socialism, or people will say like, oh, well, we need to strike a better balance, and it's like, okay, aside from like the bare minimum socialistically, where are we at in this country? Like we really don't have very much socialism compared to a country like Germany, and Germany, frankly, is has a higher quality of life, and the average person in Germany, they can buy more with the amount of money that they make. Like, I don't know. Well, anyway, without getting too far into the socialist capitalist stuff.
right. I mean, yeah, we're gonna talk about other arguments that come up a lot, like the taxes that are higher in Germany and all that stuff in another episode, probably. And generally, kind of differences because we also, we're thinking about, well, where do we want to settle down eventually? Where do we want to live when we have kids? And where do we want to work and all of that? So, yeah. But after daycare, you go to, like here in the US, I guess you're also in daycare probably until like 5 or 6, right here. And then you'd switch to a school. Although you have like kindergarten and pre-K and all of that.
Yeah,
So we
kindergarten,
kind of,
pre-K.
for us, it's just all daycare. It's all called kindergarten.
Kindergarten, I think, starts around 3, or pre-K starts around 3 to 4, and I think around 4 to 5 you enter kindergarten. I may be totally wrong about this.
And then
And
you have
then
preschool, right?
then you have preschool.
And then you go to school. Or is it preschool, pre-K? I don't know, actually.
No, pre-K is pre-kindergarten. That's why
I
it's
know,
pre-K.
but
And then it's
it's kindergarten,
and then it's preschool.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think 3 is pre-K. Did you just say that? Kindergarten is like 4. But what would be, that doesn't really matter. But it's
Then you have
kind of
elementary school, middle, high.
right.
College.
Elementary school, middle school, high school. In Germany, we basically have an elementary school and a high school, I would say, probably. They clearly have different names in German. But in Germany, it's you have grade 1 to 6, and then you switch schools, and then it's grades 7 through 12/13. It depends on the school you go to. And then that second school, we have like 2 different types mostly. One which is kind of just called secondary school, and one that's called gymnasium. And that for the gymnasium you have to have a certain basically a GPA, right? We have a different grading system which we can come to in a sec, but basically you have to have a certain GPA, like a good GPA, to go to a gymnasium, and then there you can get your Abitur, which is you can get it in 2 years, which is grades 11 and 12. That's basically the degree you get, kind of like the high school certificate,
Like a high school diploma, yeah.
Diploma, yeah. And the secondary schools, they I think they always go until grade 13, which you can also still get your Abitur there, but then it would be grades 11, 12, and 13. So you would basically it would take you a year longer to get that diploma. Technically, you can also stop after 10th grade, but I think I'll let you maybe say something first about when you switch like schools.
Yeah, so here in the US, it's about when you're 14 that you enter high school, which means it's about like 10 to 11 when you enter middle school, right?
So is that like the first grade 1 through 3 or 1 through 4 that you're in elementary school? And then
yeah, I think so.
That makes sense. And then like 4 through 8 or 4 through 7 or so is then middle school? Or 3?
No, you start high school in 9th grade, I think.
Oh,
9th,
grade.
10th, 11th, 12th. So then you have...
So it's like 4 years each probably, right? Would that make sense?
No, middle school's 3 years. So middle school is...
So I guess it's 5?
5 through... No, 6, 7, 8.
So I guess 1 through 5 is elementary school. 6, 7, 8.
Elementary / preschool, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've been in elementary school.
So then 6, 7, 8 is middle school. 9 through 12. I was like, that's weird. I was always glad that I only had to change schools once, honestly.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, so our school system kind of works where like there's a lot of elementary schools that feed into a set of middle schools, and then all of those middle schools feed into a smaller set of high schools.
So do the schools generally get bigger then?
Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, yeah. So high schools tend to be the biggest, most populous schools. Middle schools are a little bit less. Elementary schools are pretty small generally.
I feel like that's, I mean, because we only have 2 school types, I think the secondary schools or gymnasium are generally bigger But I mean, it's both always like 6 grades mostly, or 6 or 7 in the high school part, right? But I think they are just more. They just take on more students because they don't need that much one-on-one attention, probably. But I guess that would make sense, you know.
Pardon our little guy hissing here. We're taking care of my dad's dog for a couple days,
He doesn't like it. He does
and
not
our
like the
cat is not a
situation.
fan. Albeit
Okay.
it's only been like a night and
Right.
part of the
Well,
day, so
he's
he's getting a lot
okay with
better.
it, but okay. So
Oh, you wanted to ask sort of about like the. Did you want to ask about the pipeline between high school and college at all?
hold on. I think I wanted to say so. I think elementary, middle school is kind of, you know, like our elementary schools or primary schools or whatever you want to call it in Germany, and I think that's pretty equal, the systems. But in high school and our secondary schools, it's pretty different, I think. So in Germany, so we get an Abitur, right? I think I already mentioned that. Um, and
If you
so
don't know what an
basically,
abitur is, it's a test,
well, it's multiple. It's basically just
right?
consists of multiple final exams. One is a One is always a presentation that you have to choose your own topic for, but it has to like there are big tables that you have to choose from that kind of determine what subjects you do those in. It's like really complicated, but I mean, you know, I'm not gonna get into that. I also don't know too much about it. I just chose my little thing and then I did it. But you have this one presentation, then you have one um, oral exam, and then I think you always have to do. Well, you have two um, advanced courses that you choose yourself, which those both also have a written exam, and then you have one more written exam. So I think it's, I guess, 5 exams that are pretty big at the end of the year, at the end of 12th grade, or 13th if you're in the other secondary school type. And yeah, I mean, they can just really consist of everything you did the last 2 years, because that's, you know, that course phase. Because before we still are in classes until 10th grade, like you have your one group of people that you're always doing every course with. And after that, in 11th grade, you choose which courses to do. Again, there's still, like, you can't only choose. For example, you always have to do math and German and English. That's something you always have to do. I think you always have to do history or what's the earth? Geography or something like that. So you can't just do whatever you want, obviously, you know. But um, and that starts in 11th grade and goes through 12th grade, where you choose 2 advanced courses to kind of what interests you the most. And that kind of all determines to what exams you like, what of those 5 exams you take, or in which subjects you take those exams in.
Yeah.
And yeah, then you get your Abitur. You basically, I guess, I guess some people say that it's pretty hard exams, but in the end, it's just exams, really. You know, you're just gonna be prepared. Um, and I mean, you just can't be like really, really bad. You can still have a pretty bad GPA and still get it. It's not, what I'm trying to say is it's not like incredibly hard, you know.
Yeah. Do you think your GPA or the abitur affects your college chances more? Or are they pretty equal?
I mean, the thing is, the colleges then look at the GPA that you got. They basically calculate a GPA for you that consists, like, a large amount of that is how you did in the exams, because that's clearly the biggest grades, right? And then there's they just take all of your grades from 11th and 12th grade into. But I mean, yeah, I guess that's kind of the Abitur phase, you know, 11th, 12th grade, and then the exams. And that GPA, that is actually really important for schools or college. I guess for some, like, for example, medicine, right? You have to, yeah, for medicine, you have to have really good GPA. So our grading system is different. We have grades from 1 through 6. 6 is the worst, 1 is the best. And so 1.0 is, I guess technically you can have like 0.8 or something, right? I think you also said something about that, but generally people don't really get that. So generally the best is 1.0, and for many colleges, it's actually you have to have like 1.1 or something to even mostly get into the medicine. But it depends from year to year. It varies. So, but I guess how do you get your high school diploma? Do you also have tests? Like, do you have the
So,
SAT or something?
well, that has nothing to do with the high school diploma.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so you have each high school is different, but your high school tells you what credits you need to achieve to basically graduate within 4 years, and it's pretty hard.
Your high school?
Mhm. It's pretty hard in my experience to flunk out of high school. Most, like the vast majority of people don't.
Yeah.
So most people will graduate with a diploma, um, and that doesn't really say much graduating from a U.S. high school. Just generally speaking, most people will. And your GPA matters to colleges from high school. So, right, when you're applying to colleges, they do want to see like a certain GPA. Usually it's above like a 3.0 or 2.5. I think the college I went to wanted like above a 2.5 in high school. Um, Now,
But
obviously, the better your GPA is, the more competitive you are for various schools.
I guess 2.5 is just, I guess 2.0 would be half, basically, right? Like,
2.0 is a really bad ending GPA in high school. 3.0 is considered average. 4.0 is considered like stellar. So 2.5 is a little less than average.
yeah, okay. I guess that makes
Um, you're not so stealthy, little guy.
sense.
But that's not the only thing you need to be like competitive for colleges. So on top of that, we have exams like the ACT, SAT, that you need to complete.
So do you do those tests in order to have better chances to get accepted at college?
Most colleges actually require you to have that. I know it's
Oh, okay.
changing. Like colleges are starting not to focus as much, especially like higher end private colleges like
Yeah.
Stanford or Harvard or whatever. They're starting to move away from like using the SAT. But a lot of colleges still do use the SAT and want you to have a good score on the SAT. Um, And then on top of all of that, you then have AP courses, advanced placement, and the advanced placement courses you take in high school. Um, Now, technically speaking, you don't actually have to take the AP course. You can just try to pass the AP test.
That's actually really cool. I feel like that's something I would have done. I would be like, I don't want to go to that class. I'm just gonna study.
Right, so theoretically, you wouldn't have to take that course, right? But sometimes they feel like high school credit or whatever. Um,
Oh yeah.
and so the AP course, you have two grades, which is the grade you get in the class, which affects your high school GPA. And then you have the grade you get on the test. Now, generally speaking, for AP classes, you can get, instead of a 1 to 4 grading basis, where 4 is the best and 1's the worst, AP classes have a 1 to 5 grading basis. And so you can
So 5
actually,
is the best.
5 is the best. And that's how you can get an above 4.0 GPA in high school. Um, so if you get like mostly 4.0s in all of your classes, and then you also get like fives in your AP classes, theoretically you could get like a 4.3 GPA, right? Um,
Interesting.
I think depending on how many APs, right, that can go up from pretty high actually. But yeah, so they take into account not only the grade you get because that affects your GPA, but then you take the AP exam. And depending on the score you get in the AP exam, which generally speaking, colleges want to see between 4 or a 5 on the AP exam, um, they'll basically not force you to take certain college classes.
That I always thought that's really cool. But I guess for us that doesn't really apply. So that's not really a thing in Germany. I don't think you can, um, take anything from high school and apply it to credits. But I think, at least I feel like that's what people say, that that's the reason, because what you guys have as AP courses, we kind of already have in the Abitur. That we kind of have that in the Abitur already, which is why we don't even have to take those types of courses in college, I think. Which, hold on, I think before we go to college, I wanted to. Oh, right. So, because for us in Germany, we also take a bigger exam. It's really not hard at all. It's like basic skills, pretty much. Or I guess advanced skills or something in, I think, maths, German, English, something like that. Like the main, those are the three main like subjects in German schools, and you take a test for those at the end of 10th grade, and you have to pass that to even be able to go to 11th grade. And obviously, separately, you have to pass like everything else that happened in that grade. You know, you have to have good enough grades, and you have to pass that exam. Oh, and there's an oral exam too for that, which I think I did. Something about
Ebola.
and it was really cool. It was really interesting. Anyways, so some people, you can actually leave school in Germany after 10th grade, after basically, passing that exam and the grade itself, which then without an Abitur, you basically can't go to college. Well, I guess there are some equivalent things, but generally you can go to college without that Abitur. But then there are many apprenticeships that take 3 years, and it's like medical assistant jobs. It's I don't know, plumbing jobs. It's just a very broad range of jobs, job categories. Meaning that an apprenticeship isn't bad at all. Is what I'm trying to say. Like you can even be a medical assistant at that. And it's paid too, which obviously going to college isn't. So that's really cool. And you can basically, you would get out of school when you're 16. It would basically be done when you're 19 with all this stuff, and just start working and get a lot of money. So I feel like
It's kind of similar here.
Oh, is it? Because I feel like
So,
that there aren't really apprenticeships here.
well, so people in high school start going to like community colleges early on. They'll start taking classes there if they want to get into like trades. Um, but another thing too about like graduating early is I actually knew a guy who graduated like a whole year early. In high school, you can also a lot of high schools offer you the opportunity to test out of classes.
I would have done
So,
that.
so there were students that tested out of classes and didn't take them right, and so it opened them up to like basically complete their, complete all the credits for graduation early, and then they also like applied to get into college early because of that, and so they graduated a whole year earlier than all of us, and then they also, pretty much immediately went to college.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as like a separate degree to leave school like 2 years early. I mean, that's
No.
could you even with that? Could you even leave school 2 years early? I mean, you clearly don't have even in Germany. You clearly don't have the same degree then, right? Like you're missing.
No, I
Obviously, a
think
big part of
generally speaking, people who leave high school early still go to like trade school or something like that.
Interesting. But yeah, I mean, I have two of my closest friends are doing apprenticeships, and they even got their Abitur, and they maybe want to go to college later on. But it's just when you earn money way faster, and I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool option. My parents both got that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go to college.
Well, it looks like we got 1 minute left. So you go to college here.
Well,
You
we're
get
just gonna continue.
crippling debt and depression, and you never make it out.
You never make it out.
File for bankruptcy, and the debt still follows you.
College.
College.
It's the last part.
Do you want to start with American college or going to German college?
I'll ask you questions about American college.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so first, tuition.
Oh God, it's a lot.
Tell me about that.
So every school, or at least most schools, have in-state and out-of-state tuition.
And international student, because I was looking into that.
And international
It's
fees
actually
for international
ridiculous.
students, yeah.
Even
So if you see international students here at U.S. schools, they're loaded, like
or
100%.
they really good in school and got a scholarship.
Probably not. They would have just gone to Oxford. Like they're loaded.
Oh, you mean him? Like what we
Like any international kid going to CU Boulder who didn't choose to go to like Harvard on their academics, you know, they're either doing an exchange program or they're really loaded.
Even exchange programs are really expensive though.
Yeah. So in-state tuition isn't terrible. It's actually relatively manageable. But then out-of-state tuition is like $60,000 a year.
I guess so. It's also hard to tell because I think it depends on how many credits you do. It depends on what major you're doing, right? It probably depends on the state or even the city you're in. So I think it's probably hard to give an estimate, right? But
it
if
is.
you would like, based on your experience, how much are you spending a semester?
My base tuition, I think, is $15,000 every year.
That's okay, actually, for
right.
American.
As opposed to out of state, which is about $60,000 a year, right?
Really?
Yeah.
International students, that must be even more than that 60,000 because international students pay so much.
Yeah,
I was looking into
it's really ridiculous.
Okay, so then how many years? Huh?
Like, should I talk about how to reduce tuition?
All right. I mean, there's still options, right?
So,
obviously.
Getting out of high school, I actually had a scholarship going into college, which lowered the tuition substantially. And then on top of that, you apply for something called the FAFSA, federal application for student aid, I think. And the FAFSA goes usually based on your parents' income, which is kind of ass because my parents weren't going to help me out with college at all. Like my dad promised me he was never going to help me out with college, but he made a lot of money. And so going into college,
That's so weird.
It was really rough trying to manage the expenses because I basically had to get scholarships for everything that I couldn't pay for myself.
Didn't he help
and
you
the CU Boulder pretty much didn't take anything off financially, nor did the government. It was all loans that I got. So I had to get scholarships. And yes, in the end, he did help out. But he kind of had, he had some stuff going on and he changed his mind. But for me, initially, I had to go basically entirely off of in-state tuition, a scholarship I got from Merit from CU Boulder, which was pretty hard to get, and then also scholarships. Which the scholarships, you have some that are like department related, and you have others that are just random scholarships. Like I got one scholarship that was just like write an essay, and I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote it and I won it. It was like $5,000. So, right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna talk about Germany later, obviously.
And then, but because they went off my parents' money, now that I'm married, that's actually an exemption from that. So they consider me an independent student now. And so I get a lot of government aid, whereas I didn't before.
That is great. I feel like that's how it should work, but you shouldn't have to worry about, that must have been, especially if your dad said, like, he's not going to help you with that.
It was stressful for
and
a
your
long
mom
time.
Either. Yeah, it must, of course you want to get a high paying job, or a higher paying job, or even just do what you want to do in life. And mostly you need a degree for that, so.
Yep.
And people here are still paying their student debts off when they're in their 30s, sometimes even later.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how long people are paying their debts off. I heard somewhere that like it used to be the student debt used to be manageable, and like working in the summers, you could basically pay off college by working in the summers. But like the amount tuition has gone up, has just basically blown past the roof of how much wages have gone up, especially like minimum wages. And so it's just getting more and more unmanageable, this college thing, and the banks love it because the debt that they collect collects interest, and the banks are big lobbyists, and so I doubt that they're trying to reduce student tuition anytime soon because they make a lot of money off of it,
True.
which is really crappy. But that's what tuition looks like here. It's really expensive, and the rate at which tuition increases is far greater than the rate at which wages increase.
And then they say, so many things included, like a bus pass, at least for your university, a bus pass, and it's like, or you get a bus pass for free or something like that. They phrase it so you think you get it for free. You're like, well, I paid thousands of dollars in tuition. I don't get it for free.
You pay for your bus pass. And at the same time, they're like, they could easily implement a system where like college students are allowed to use the parking lots for free.
That's
but
awesome.
They don't. Mm-hmm. Like, what? I pay so much money, and they're gonna try to like charge me for the parking lots.
$8 a day or so, or even more.
Yeah, it's really, really.
And then
ridiculous.
you try to get because public transport here is not good either, so you can't even mostly. I mean, for us, it's actually probably better than for most people right now where we live.
That's true.
And it obviously depends on the state and the city and all of that. We know that, but generally in the U.S., I feel like public transport is not that great. And so then they're basically forcing you to, or there are also no free parking lots nearby or something, right? Where you can park there and then take a bus.
But that's it.
Yeah, but there's not a lot. Like there wouldn't be enough for all the students, and you have so many parking lots there because every single person has one single car. Like no one is really.
Everybody's got a car,
car sharing
pretty much.
Or something.
Yeah.
Meaning many parking lots, and most like the good ones are obviously pretty filled up most of the time, I think, or at least because we looked into this, at least the student parking permit for one semester, and I mean we were probably kind of late to be fair, but still there was just nothing was open anymore. But if you drive there to that parking lot, you will always find a spot pretty much.
Yeah, like they always have open spots. It's really ridiculous because they're acting like, oh, we've like sold all these parking spots, and yet there's always parking spots.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's a ridiculous system that, in my opinion, because it doesn't really make sense, it's just some kind of corruption at the university level.
I mean, clearly here with all the tuition, and there's still like no free parking or anything. But I
mean, the universities are a business, like.
Yeah, definitely.
Even when they're public universities like the one I go to, it's a business. If they were truly public, it wouldn't cost so much.
Right.
I'm gonna go pull these blinds really quick.
Oh. Okay. Then, so you basically divide it in undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees here, right?
Yeah.
So an undergrad is generally what, 4 years?
Undergraduate is however long it takes you to complete your undergraduate credit hours. So it could take 3 to 5 years ish. Is generally what it is. Most people graduate in 4.
And then, do you know what what is the graduate degrees? Is that like 2 years? Or 3?
So depends on the graduate degree. Yeah. For an associate's, I think it's pretty.
All right, you have associate's degrees too. Yeah.
Associate's degrees are like 1 or 2 years. Masters are generally like a few years, like 2 or 3. The master's program I'm in is like an accelerated one that's like 1 year.
Right.
And then you have PhD programs, and those, generally speaking, are 3 to 4 years, depending on what program you get into. And then past that, actually, if you want to continue down like academia route, you then have to get a postdoc, which is a postdoctorate. And I don't think there's a degree for that, but all you're doing basically is working under a professor in their lab, You don't take any classes or anything, but you're working under that professor, trying to get your name on research that you're conducting under that professor. And then that's with the hope of like sometime uh, you can apply to a university with the research you did, and they'll accept you for some sort of like research position, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but I think PhD programs and postdoc programs, you are basically paid to be there. I don't think at the associates or master's level you get paid to be there.
Okay. And then is that the case for every school pretty much that you have?
As far as
I
I'm
mean,
aware,
that you have, I mean, you say semesters though, right? Or I guess technically it's term because technically it's a trimester, right? Because you have summers too. You have fall, spring, and summer.
right? But it's a semester of school. Like you only have 2 semesters of school every year.
Well, if you split it in three,
But
then
I
it
guess
would
I
be a
guess technically we
trimester.
do have a summer semester,
Well,
but
then
that's
because if you
generally
split it in
like
three,
the
then it's a
classes are
trimester.
much shorter. Um,
I feel like most people don't necessarily take summer classes if they don't have. Didn't you also say that at least at your school it's also more expensive in
it
summer?
is, yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, me as a teacher, I wouldn't want to go teach in summer. Um, yeah. Hold on. What else did we? You talked about scholarships, right? Financial aid.
Hmm.
So maybe the application process, because there's also
Oh
something
yeah,
about money that I've noticed there, from what I've seen.
yeah. So when you're in high school, the application process is pretty daunting, or at least it was for me because I didn't have really parents who went to college, so I didn't really know what I was doing. Um, you generally speaking want to go speak with your advisor, like your counselor, your school counselor, and they help you out. They tell
Fancy.
you,
We don't have addresses.
they tell you like what schools would be a good fit for you based on like your GPA and what you're interested in, um, and they can help you out with like your applications there. Most schools need letters of recommendation, generally like 3 to 4 letters of
What?
recommendation.
Seriously? You in
Uh,
college? Oh, I would hate that.
and so in high school, you have to go ask your
Oh
teachers for letters of recommendation.
no.
Yeah. And then you have to pay for an application fee for most schools,
Right.
and then you
How
also have
much
to.
is that?
It depends on the school, but it's
Like how
about
long?
$60.
Oh yeah, I guess that was the same for you.
Yeah,
You're already at the school now and had to apply for your master's and
right.
still
I
had
had
to
to apply
pay
for my master's
$60.
and pay $60 again. Um, but I mean, depending on the school, it can actually be really expensive.
That's only for applying. I mean,
And then when you're applying for schools, so you have to use the proprietary websites, which tell you what you need to do. Generally speaking, you need to put together like a resume. You have to put together individual essays that they ask you for. So most colleges will. It's not like a universal essay that like, hey, I'm just going to write this essay and hopefully colleges will like it. No, every college has their own essay that they want you to write. Um, and so it's a lot of work if you want to apply to a lot of colleges. It really is.
and a lot of money.
It's a lot of work and quite a bit of money. Yeah. Um, now, I think for the sports side of things, it's a little different. Generally, people get scouted out for sports by
Right.
colleges, and they sign on when they're in like sometimes middle school. It's ridiculous.
What?
Yeah, like
How do you know there's nothing that's gonna happen to any kid
college
or?
college coaches will start scouting people at like a really early age and offering them like spots at their school.
That's also a really weird thing that I've noticed here that people are very focused. I think mostly it's American football, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure there are soccer's like scholarships and that stuff too, but
and it's because football is a big moneymaker for the colleges. It brings in a lot of like if you're a good football team, you're going to get a lot of students.
right. And then you also have this one specific football team, right, at every college, and they play against other colleges. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
their own little league.
Yeah,
It's actually kind of crazy.
it's a big deal here, college ball. Like you have pro football, which obviously is probably it's the top, it's the most watched. But then under that, you get college football and college
Do they
basketball is
even?
very frequently watched, stuff like that.
I guess we went to one basketball game once. But is that even on? Can you see those college games on TV?
Yeah,
Even? My God,
yeah, yeah.
that's
It's
so weird to me. I don't know. I feel like they should just focus on the education. Just kidding. But I don't know. I think it's weird that you get a scholarship to a school to be in there on their team and then do some classes, while you're there, basically.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of those kids are trying to go pro, and so college isn't the
Exactly.
biggest deal for them. Um, they're trying to get scouted to go pro, basically, and then they'll quit college once they go pro. Um, but most don't.
Right,
There's
most
so
don't.
many people playing college ball that most will not make it.
Do this? Oh no, I guess they probably get like a full scholarship or something like that, so they don't even have to pay tuition.
Yep.
Good for them, right?
Yeah. Good for them.
Okay, was there anything else you wanted to say about
No.
schools? No. Okay. So I'm also just gonna start with the application process. So in Germany, we also have mostly public schools, colleges, right? Which are free.
Must be
And
nice.
yeah, it actually is. Then there are some private schools. I don't really see a reason why you would go there necessarily, because I feel like they're generally not that much better, if at all. But they have a monthly fee, which is still less probably than even you with your 15,000 as in-state tuition would pay. But I mean, technically, right now I am, because I'm doing an online program. Technically, I am at a private university, so I have to pay something around $400 every month. But again, that's like still way less than what you would pay here at a public college, right? And there's really no need for you generally to go to a private college. So you just don't. There is like something for your student pass or bus pass or something like that too, which is probably something around, I don't know, 100 to 200 euros per semester, I would assume. But it's really not a lot, and that's obviously very nice. We still have financial aid. Oh, I wanted to start with the application process. Well, I'm going to do the financial aid first. We still have financial aid, which is just kind of like the FAFSA, I guess, because it's just the whole country. And I mean, if your parents don't earn a lot of money, you will probably get money from the state, from the government, right? Basically, also to go to college, right? And that's just going to support you for those smaller amounts of money that you'll have to pay to the college and for books and all that stuff. And you get more when you're living alone, for example, not with your parents. Um, I, for example, right now actually do not qualify, because even though we're married, they still take my parents' income into account. But I think it doesn't even matter. I think I actually
So no marriage loophole.
Huh?
No marriage loophole.
No, actually not. Not like here. But I guess it doesn't. I mean, for us right now, it doesn't matter, because my parents still don't technically make enough. So I would still be able to get the financial aid if I wasn't, like, if we were to make money, which we are. So, but technically, it's pretty easy, is what I'm trying to say. I think to get that financial aid, if your parents aren't kind of a little better off, which makes sense. I mean, that's kind of the same here, right? But in Germany, it actually makes sense, because, I mean, your parents can give you, they even get money from the government themselves until you're 25 if you're going to college, or I think also doing an apprenticeship. They still get money from the government, which is, I think, is more than what you would need to cover all your expenses for school. So it makes sense in that case in Germany that the parents would be required to really pay that, and you don't get financial assistance from the government.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. But that's also a loan, so you have to pay it back. Um, but I guess it's pretty easy. How much you have to pay back per month depends on how much you make. You will never have to pay back more than, I think, 10,000 euros, which is probably because most people won't get that much money. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. And we do have scholarships too for people who, for some reason, don't qualify for that financial aid, for example. I think that's kind of, you have to write like a lot of stuff about, you kind of have to be politically engaged or socially engaged or just do something for the community, and then write a little bit about that. Not really a formal essay or anything like that. But I think most scholarships are also more for certain scientific programs or projects or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So to come back to the application, we have one portal, and you, for the whole country of Germany, and you basically select whatever schools you want to apply to there, and then you need your Abitur, like the basically where your GPA is, all your grades and all of that, and basically your high school diploma, right? You need to upload that there, and all the schools can see it. And mostly you still have to go to the website of that school and fill out some basic stuff about yourself, but that's about it. It doesn't cost anything. You can apply to as many schools as you want to. You won't pay a single euro, and then I think you can rank them on their website. Basically, I mean, it doesn't really make too much sense, I think, because you can still see on that website, you can always check in and see if you got accepted or not, and then one of those you can accept the like offer, I guess, that they gave you. And obviously only one school, right? Makes sense. So it's pretty easy. It's just handled with that one website, and that makes it very, very easy and uncomplicated. You don't have to write any essays. You don't need to, at least most schools that I've seen now, you don't need any essays. You don't need any recommendation letters, anything like that. You don't pay $60. You just upload your stuff and say what you want to study, and then you probably get accepted if you're not really bad. So that's kind of cool. And then generally, so we have bachelor's and master's degrees. We don't have like the classification in undergrad and associate and grad degrees. So bachelor's and master's, and bachelor's are generally 3 years only. It depends though. There are some that take up to 6 years, like medicine. You don't need a pre-med degree or anything, because I think here you need a bachelor's and then you can go to med school. So med school is basically just a normal medicine. That major is just a normal university, and you can just go do that right after getting your high school diploma, and that's 6 years. But most are 3, which is nice because it doesn't take super long, right, to get your degree. Generally, what I've noticed is that you have more options for majors here in the US. So I think it's just a little more, I don't want to say conservative, but I think some of the newer subjects or majors you can do here are not really available in Germany, I think.
Like my major.
Like, yeah, for,
They
it
just
would
kind
just
of a
be,
general
it's just
biology major.
biology.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really specify or specialize in anything
Yeah.
like that. For example, neuroscience, we have one bachelor's degree. That's apparently really shitty in Germany, but you can do your master's. So
I was looking through some of those German course catalogs, and like they want you to take like botany and
yeah, it's very basic.
evolution and stuff like that. I like how here in my major, which I take molecular cellular developmental biology, right? I like how in that major it's very technical, very focused. Like it feels
Yeah,
just a lot of my classes, especially at the higher level, are just very, very focused on molecular biology, which is what I want to
probably more
do.
interesting too then, because it's
Yeah.
not so. But I mean, it depends on what major, and I think that's also something I really like about the U.S. Probably the only thing here. Oh, I mean about the colleges. Um, but it can also be good, obviously, right? Like if you just do biology and then want to, I mean, I guess you could still specialize later on, even though you didn't do just plain biology, right? But that's generally a good thing about if it's just biology. But I mean, I guess you would
I
just
mean,
generally specialize more in your master's degree in Germany.
I feel like coming out of my undergraduate, I feel like I probably know a lot more than somebody who would have just come out of like. All right, so picking up where my computer randomly shut off there. Um, I don't know. I feel like the ability for my degree to specialize has allowed me to know a lot more about my field than somebody, graduating from a general biology degree in Germany.
Well, yeah, I mean, they will probably know more about botany or something like that, but since you don't
Right. I
really
don't.
want to know about,
Right.
it's
It's
clearly
nothing to do with what I want to do.
right, and I think that's a good thing, actually. But I mean, you can specialize obviously in your master's degree. So your master's degree is generally 2 years, yeah, and there over there in Germany. Um, which I really like that it doesn't take you that long to get a bachelor's and a master's degree. And then you can still do, I'm not super familiar with how that works, but you can still get a doctor's, like, doctor title, I guess. Um, and then you can also get a professor title thing, after that. I don't know how long that takes and how exactly that works. Um, because I haven't really looked into that yet. But you can obviously do that. We actually just also saw that the tenure track, for example, also exists in Germany now, which they just call tenure track because they're just taking over some things from the US or other countries, right? Um, so yeah, that's kind of cool. It's obviously changing. Yeah, I always say there's really no tuition, and then there's also no such thing as a sports team. I mean, I don't think there's any school that has really a sports team. I think you just go to a random club if you want to play, like a soccer club or something, if you want to play that, right? That's not connected to your school at all. There are definitely no scholarships for that, therefore, and that's really just not a thing. Um, and I think that's pretty much it. I mean,
I
it's
mean, I
just
feel
pretty
like
straightforward in Germany.
I feel like that's a really telling sign of like where our priorities are here in America, right? Like
Kind of.
like college or pro football is such a moneymaker, right? And so who are we letting go to college for free essentially is the people who have the potential
Mhm.
to go make it pro and make a ton of money. Like
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous how money driven this whole system is when in reality it should be for the betterment of like our people, like our citizens,
Yeah.
like to educate people so that they can help the world in a way, so
Right.
that they can do something
Not really. I
worthwhile.
mean, if you're all being honest, even if you like American football, I mean, that's not gonna, do anything for the world in the end. Whereas
Right,
research
right,
biologists, right, they're gonna discover stuff, and doctors, they're helping people and all of that, So
right. Like college ball here isn't curing cancer, nor is pro football. Like
right.
that's like neither of those things are contributing to anything other than like enriching the people who are at the top of that food chain essentially, and they don't even really produce anything outside of merch, which I don't know. It's kind of almost like a leech on the system in a
I
way.
mean, they just get a
It's an
lot of money and they
entertainment
just have a good
leech.
life,
Yeah,
And but I mean, to be fair, obviously there's a big soccer culture in Germany too, right? It's not as big as here in terms of
and
there are
obviously not
scholarships and stuff
ingrained in the
like that,
system.
right?
Right.
It's just, I mean, they obviously make a ridiculous amount of money everywhere in the world too, which I mean I don't necessarily approve of, right? But
Yeah.
at least it's not really, you don't get advantages in college or school because you're good at a sport. I don't know.
Wrapping things up, I think generally speaking, up until college, I think the German education system is generally superior to the American. Um, just from a livability standpoint, and also just sort of like a. Well, I think the whole way through, the German education system is way better from a
Overall,
livability
yeah,
standpoint.
there are
I think
clearly
the actual
points.
education system is better up until college. I know that American colleges are generally the best in the world, but
But
that
you
comes
also
at
pay
a
for it,
massive cost. Like
right?
we do pay for that, and is it really necessary? Right? Like, are we? Is this overfunded? You know, almost like university business. Is that really giving us proportionately more than what the German education system is for free?
No, honestly not. I
I
mean,
would
this is
doubt it.
not, you can always specialize in a master's degree or something, and overall the education doesn't take as long.
Yeah.
You will have both degrees in within 5 years probably, and then you can do your, like, you can still specialize as much, right? So I don't know, is it really worth it? I mean, sure, for some people probably. I mean, I'm not saying this is bad, right? And most people still get through the debt and all of that, but it's just so much baggage that comes with that, and I don't feel like your college education is that much better, you know? Like, it's
Yeah.
not as if all your teachers are just geniuses. You have some, especially here, that are like really cool and that did a lot of
And
cool research,
I've
right?
definitely had some awesome
So that's really
professors.
cool. But I mean, still, your teachers are generally just teachers,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, the other thing too is actually our college professors. I don't know if this is the same thing in Germany, but our college professors don't really need to have an education degree or any sort of like education requirement to teach. Like
Mm. I
our
mean,
our professors, while some of them do have experience teaching, a lot of them are just like people who went through the education system who did good research.
I guess technically that's also, you just have to, have experience. But I think it's probably always easier to get into that stuff when you actually know how to teach and have done that before.
Yeah. All right. Well, closing out. Um, this was our first, or
Episode really.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, our first good episode of the Talking Morons.
Talking more.
And moron number 3 will bid you
Big
all
moron.
goodbye. Meow.